I can unmute.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm that we have commenced live stream.
Is that okay, Chief Executive? May we start?
I'm not getting it from mine, but if Leslie, I'll just double check. Yeah, it wasn't coming through.
I have had confirmation from a third source, Chief Exec, that it is live.
Yes, it is now come through. Thank you. You're okay
Perfect.
to go, Speaker.
Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting. This is obviously the Chief Executive's last full council, so welcome to you all. So before we begin to consider tonight's business, can I please take this opportunity to remind you to keep your devices on mute unless you're speaking. Please indicate that you wish to speak by adding a comment in the chat function or raising your hand in WebEx. The meeting facilitator will advise me that you wish to speak. Thank you. And can I make the usual request to everyone to ensure that any mobile phones are switched to off or put to silent. I've received an apology for absence from Councillor Martin Moran Bryant. Are there any other apologies, please? Can't see anyone waving at me, nothing in the chat bar, so I assume that's all. If you lose connection during the meeting or have any difficulties with your equipment, can you please contact the meeting facilitator by indicating in the chat function, or if you can't get in, phoning the number provided. May I also request that you advise me if you need to leave the meeting early, please. Thank you. So moving on now to item number 1, questions from members of the public. I'd just like to take this opportunity to remind everyone that we can only accept questions from members of the public that have been received by 6 o'clock this evening. I have received notification that Mr. Jerry Sansom wishes to ask the Mayor a question. Mr. Sansom, please. Can't see you, but are you there? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Would you like to go ahead, Mr. Sansom, please?
Yes, okay, thank you. Good evening. My introduction and question will take approximately 4 minutes. My name is Jerry Sansom and I represent CPRE Bedfordshire, the Countryside Charity. We're a local Bedford-based environmental charity and our aims are the protection of the Bedfordshire countryside and urban green spaces. At the last full council meeting, a debate was held regarding the proposed East-West Rail route and specifically Route E, which takes the railway through the heart of Bedford before heading between Clapham and Brickhill, then east through tranquil countryside towards Cambridge. During this debate, the Mayor and Councillor Headley said that everyone was aware of what the council was proposing in terms of East-West Rail and Route E. It had been council policy for years. That has now been demonstrated as a complete fiction by the huge number of Brickhill residents who attended a crisis meeting of Brickhill Parish Council in the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Ryder's constituency because they clearly knew nothing at all about it. They were not happy. CPRE Bedfordshire is now aware, following a Freedom of Information request, just why the people of Bedford Borough knew nothing about the council's proposals for Route E. It's because the Mayor, in an effort to maintain absolute secrecy, decided not to debate the council's response to the East-West Rail route consultation at any meeting where members of the public and the local press could hear and report on the matter. We now know that the full response has never been debated openly at executive or full council meetings in order to obtain the formal approval of councillors. As far as we're aware, the council response to East-West Rail consultation has still not been published on their website. Residents are therefore unable to see what their council has said on their behalf. This is an assault on the democratic process. Reading the full response will make clear the Mayor's principal reason for promoting Route E has little to do with increasing the prosperity of Bedford Town, far from it. as paragraphs 210 to 2.14 of the response clearly show, the principal reason for promoting Route E is to ensure the development of 2 new towns in the North Bedfordshire countryside. One of 10,000 homes, almost 3 times the size of Ampthill town, stretching from Claphill and Brickhill to Twinwoods, Milton Ernest and on to Bletsoe. And another 4,000 homes, the size of Ampthill, on the northern edge of Sharnbrook village. Either will cause the destruction of enormous areas of countryside, including the River Great Ouse and Valley area, at a time of climate emergency and the catastrophe of massive biodiversity loss, when every inch of our countryside is a precious environmental asset. Are we to assume that these plans to destroy our countryside also have the approval of the Labour, Green, Independent and Conservative groups? We and the CPRE Bedfordshire strongly supports East West Rail. We and the Wildlife Trust favour the southern Route B, using Wixham's as a parkway station connecting to Thameslink, reducing traffic flows to the centre of Bedford, improving residents' quality of life, and then following the established A421 transport corridor to Cambridge. Route B will have the least environmental impact. Now our question to the Mayor. Can he please advise us when he will publish on the Council's website and send to town and parish councils the Borough Council's full response to the East West Rail route consultation, so that residents can read for themselves and in detail the Council's promotion of Route E? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Speaker, I will answer some, but I'll ask Councillor Headley if it's agreeable to you to answer some of the question.
Yeah.
Remarkable in the disinformation that has been given there. There is a local plan, and Mr. Sanson will know that the government have said that we need to deliver 1,305 houses a year, and that is a standard method, and Central Beds is near about 2,000 and Milton Keynes about the same. Any new local development will have to go through the plan, and I know we're going to executive with a plan to do consultation in June is the planned date. To think that East West Rail will affect a Sharnbrook, some 7 miles, I think, from memory, from the East West Rail route, it is nowhere near Route E, goes anywhere near Sharnbrook. If you read the document, it doesn't say will, it says we couldn't do it and we need to find the room for these houses. The place where that was being is not mine. I have a preferred option. I'm keeping that to myself because I will listen to the evidence, and if the evidence change, then we'll do that. But I have no inclination to build a settlement, let alone the size that Mr. Sanson is saying. So there isn't that, and we will publish that. It has gone through multiple consultations. It has gone through the local plan. It was clear in the local plan. And there was a lot of consultation and there was stuff in the local press about this. So the disinformation that's there, yes, we have to deliver a lot of new houses in terms of the government standard method. Where they will be has not been confirmed and will go through this council in the local plan, just as the previous local plan did to 2030. So we'll go through that process, and there will be a public consultation. The last local plan, we had 6 lots of public consultation on, and each one we talked about the railway going through the station. So please don't alarm people with stuff that's not happening. There will be a consultation on this. If you listen to the government's budget last year, it said the new towns in Bedford, I think Camborne and Cambridge, I'm not sure about the third one. It didn't mention a new town anywhere north of Bedford. We will continue to work on the local plan. We will consult just as we did last time on the local plan. But please, the scurrilous information that, this East West Rail will serve a Sharnbrook population, it clearly will go somewhere near the first one you said, but there are no plans. And to my knowledge, East West Rail are not working. I believe a developer would be working on that because they see that as an opportunity. But I don't believe, well, I know we are not working on it, and I know that East West Rail aren't working on it. But maybe Councillor Headley could actually just confirm that, if that's agreeable with you, Madam Speaker.
Yes, it is. Councillor Headley, would you like to add
Yeah,
anything?
thank you. There's a number of points made there. The first one is the accusation that things have been kept secret. Well, I think any impassionate sort of observer would be hard to draw that conclusion. I've mentioned before, and I'll have to repeat myself in the answer to this question. You know, during the period of the consultation, the mayor put several stories on his website about it, emailed out people who was on his email list, I think 3 times, 2 columns in the Bedford Independent referenced it, put out press releases. That's an odd way to keep things secret if you're actually going to put out press releases to the press on the matter. Numerous social media, Twitter, Facebook posts about it. The council also emailed everybody in its consultation email list. You know, this is to accuse the council and or the mayor of trying to keep this secret is a very unusual interpretation of what happened, because if anything, everybody was working to do the exact opposite, to make sure as many people as possible were aware of what was going on. Now, no method of communication is perfect, and there may well have been some people who didn't read or see any of those things, but that wasn't for want of trying. The council and the mayor tried very hard to make sure people were aware of what was going on and what the council's position on it was. You then quoted from our response to the consultation, which again is hardly a secret. It's been on the East West Rail Company's website for over a year, for anybody who wants to read it. And you quoted, well, you didn't quote actually, you interpreted, and I'd say, well, you misinterpreted several paragraphs in that, claiming that they were arguing that the council wanted to build new towns, villages north of Bedford. But those paragraphs do not say that at all. Those paragraphs factually state what's happened in the local plan process and that developers had brought those plans forward. They are 100% factual statements. They do not prejudge anything going forward. They don't make any sort of a claim that they are preferred in any way, shape or form. They are 100% factual statements of what had already happened at that point. But I think, unfortunately, the CPR in Bedfordshire has got a reputation now for misrepresenting things. I read an article on your website recently, and I think other councillors have actually, at the full council meeting, quoted from this, and unfortunately made themselves look very ill-informed by doing so. On your website, there's an article that talks about the freight trains that you know, that may use the railway, and the fact that other towns, I'll read it actually, no other major conurbation across the Oxford-Cambridge arc wishes to see this freight going through their town city unless it has to. Oxford will have an Oxford North Parkway, Monkey's will use Bletchley, south of the city, and Cambridge will have a link with the West Anglia Main Line well south of the city. Claiming that those cities, Oxford, Cambridge, will use parkway stations and the trains won't go into Oxford and Cambridge, which shows an enormous level of misunderstanding of the situation. I mean, by promoting that, you're spreading misinformation. Now, that may be a genuine mistake. You know, that you may not understand what this railway is about and where it's going, because it is going to Oxford and Oxford Station. It's going to Cambridge and Cambridge Station, but you're promoting information that is misinformation. So I think, you know, fortunately, you have a reputation. You come to this council meeting and promoting misinformation, and on your website you promote misinformation. It's not helpful to the population and the public when they look at sources like yours that don't provide the accurate information about the situation. And then on my final point, you talked about you preferring Route B, and clearly people can have a view about any of the routes, and you had a view about Route B, and that's absolutely fine. Everybody can promote and would have responded to the consultation whichever routes they thought were the preferable route. But you cannot give the impression that Route B is without any impact. All the routes will have some level of impact. I mean, I read from the Historic England response to the consultation on Route B. It says the route corridor option B is likely to include a large number of listed buildings and structures, including some highly graded assets listed at grade 1 and 2 star. The route corridor potentially affects Moggerhanger Park, grade 2 registered park, and Park and Garden, Croxton Park registered park and garden, and the Hazels registered park and garden. The route corridor is also likely to include a number of scheduled monuments. Also, Natural England were very concerned that the routes, including Route B, would have an impact on the Marston Vale Community Forest. So I'm not saying that Route E is without impact. All routes will have some impact. We have to be realistic about this. If you support the railway, which obviously you claim you do, any of the routes will have some impact. What we need to do is work to minimise those impacts and maximise the benefits to the railway, to the people of Bedford Borough. But you can't claim that some routes would have no impact at all, or you know, you need to look at all the routes. And Route B, as much as any of the others, in fact, more so in many ways, would have an impact on the environment, and you have to recognise that. Thank you.
Mr. Sanson, would you like a supplementary question or to make a short statement?
I'll just make a short statement, thank you. And that statement will be that if the council is so happy for us to make these comments, why don't they publish, as we've requested, on their website for everyone to see, so everyone can make up their own minds what you're saying immediately, rather than having us go to East Northants District Council to get copies of it from their website. It just really doesn't make any sense at all. And with respect to freight trains, East West Rail will connect the East Coast ports and eventually end up in Swindon or through to Bristol. So the final stop is not Oxford. Oxford has an Oxford North Parkway station, and that will lig next to Swindon. The next stop from Cambridge will probably be Ipswich or Felixstowe, and so there'll be a Parkway station almost certainly on the Anglia mainline link. We didn't say that Sharnbrook would be beneficial to East West Rail. It's the council that says it in item 2.13 on page 8 of their East West Rail consultation submission. They say new settlements raising in size from 4,500 to 10,000 dwellings. The settlement of 4,500 in size is the one located at Sharnbrook Soldrock. The one of 10,000 dwellings is the one located at Twinwoods. So publish, let the people see what they think.
Thank you, Mr. Sanson.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, I'm now going to move on as we have no more questions. That concludes agenda item 1, and we now move on to agenda item 2. Agenda item 2 is petitions to be presented by members of the public. I understand there's no new petitions to be presented by members of the public, therefore we'll move on to agenda item 3. Agenda item 3 is minutes of the last meeting. Does the council approve the minutes of the meeting held on the 24th of February 2021 as a correct record and authorise me to sign them? Can you just wave?
Approved.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Agenda item 4 then now is disclosures of local and or disclosable pecuniary interests. As I know members appreciate, it is important that we observe the provisions in the Code of Conduct relating to the disclosures of interests. So can I ask members to disclose the existence and nature of any local and or disclosable pecuniary interests in tonight's business, or when the interest becomes apparent? And I've got first of all Councillor Meader, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. As usual, I need to declare an interest on item 9, as my wife works for the Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Authority. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Crofts.
Thank you. I also need to declare my wife works for the Bedford Fire and Rescue Service.
Thank you. Councillor Sawyer. Councillor Sawyer, I can't see you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's you. Councillor Sawyer, yes, please.
Yeah,
You had your hand raised.
I think it's item 7 regarding fusion. Item 7 regarding fusion, local interest. My wife is a member of Robinson Pool.
Okay, thank you. In that case, maybe I need to declare an interest as I am a member of Robinson Pool myself. Any more?
Oh.
Yes, my apologies, Chair. I am a member
You
of
are
Robertson Pool as well, and have been an active user when it's open.
Me too, yeah. Councillor Headley, I think we're all going to declare this now, aren't we? We're all members of... Sorry, Councillor Headley.
Mine's obviously related, but slightly different in that I'm a member of Bedford and County Athletic Club Executive Committee.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Can't see any more hands raised, so I assume that's it. Thank you. We'll now move to agenda item 5. Agenda item 5, Speakers' Communications. The Mayor made a COVID secure visit to Midas Pattern Company Limited on the 25th of February to acknowledge their environmental improvements. The Mayor, along with the MD and Forest of Marston Vale, planted the first 10 of 500 trees at Shocott Spring. There'll be 500 trees planted annually for the next 5 years. With regards to this evening's agenda, I'd like to bring it to your attention that there's no business to conduct in relation to items 10, 14 and 15. These being questions of Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Authority, membership of committees and items brought forward under Procedure Rule 26. Thank you. We'll now move forward to agenda item 6. Agenda item 6 is petitions presented by borough councillors. I understand that there are no new petitions to be presented by councillors, so we'll move to agenda item 7. Agenda item 7 is debate on petitions previously submitted. As members will know, under the Council's petitions scheme, petitions with more than 30 signatures are subject to debate at full council, and tonight we have one petition to be debated. The petition organiser or their representative has up to 5 minutes to introduce their petition, and members will then have the opportunity to ask any questions they may have of the petition organiser before debating the subject matter and deciding whether to make any recommendations. So can I now invite Mr. Steve Clark to introduce a petition requesting the council to end its contract with Fusion Lifestyle, noting that 5 minutes is the maximum time for the introduction, Mr. Clark. I can't see you, but if you speak, then you'll pop to the top of the thing.
Right, yes, good evening, Madam.
Good evening, Mr. Clark.
Good
Go
evening,
ahead.
everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to for this petition. I've been a Kempston resident since 1974 and a member of Kempston Pool since it first opened. My wife and I have fond memory of the way the pool was managed when it was under borough stewardship, and are very sad to have to raise a request of this sort. But unfortunately, Fusion Lifestyle have never been able to meet the same standards that the borough did, and standards that I would consider to be standard conditions of contract and service for a healthy pool. The main issues have been cleanliness and hygiene. I will be on record with the borough of having come several times about the litter, the absence of regular cleaning around the pool, the maintenance of the facilities, how the showers work intermittently, lockers don't have locks and don't get replaced, etc., etc. And from time to time, there have been a woeful lack of staff who are just so demotivated they don't bother to turn up for their shifts, impacting on the safety of people actually using the pool. What brought this to a head, in fact, was the recent lockdown situation. When the lockdown began to ease in the autumn last year, my wife and I waited eagerly for Kempston Pool to reopen, which, as you are probably aware, it didn't. It didn't open. It promised to open, and it promised to open again, and it still didn't open. So my wife and I searched around for an alternative and found a pool called Middleton Pool. Some of you may be familiar with it, in Newport Pagnell. this was a stark contrast to the management of Fusion. It was a pleasant area, the staff were friendly, it was spotlessly clean, it was very well organised in terms of a single line entry and a single line entrance, and people to sanitise their hands and things and that nature. And it just amplified in us what a travesty is that Fusion continued to have the contract with Kempston Pool. And I'd just like to close by just summarising these are not merely my views. The Trustpilot reviews for Kempston Pool are 96% bad. Now that must be something of a record to get 96%. The employee satisfaction survey came at 2.8 out of 5, not even meeting halfway satisfactory. And I noticed today that this petition has received 45 respondents, which is in fact, I believe, half as much again as the minimum amount to bring it to the council's attention. And I'd like to thank you again for listening to me, and I'm sorry if I've rambled a little bit, but obviously I'm not used to this sort of thing, and I'll end my statement there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. That was perfect timing, not over at all, so thank you for that. Do members have any questions for Mr. Clark? Can't see any hands.
Madam Speaker?
Yes, Councillor Weir?
Yes, I'd like to ask you a question of Mr. Clark, in that when did he notice this deterioration from the standards that the borough provided and that Fusion provided? Was it prior to the COVID pandemic that we've entered into? And has that played a big part in the deterioration, or was that deterioration prior to the pandemic?
It was prior to the pandemic, Councillor Weir. It was, I can't be precise over the timing, but it was not very long after Fusion took over that we began to notice the difference in the atmosphere amongst the employees, the difference in the way the facility was being maintained and cleaned. And as I say, I am on record of having complained to the Borough Council on several occasions, and they will know that we've, members of the pool, have constantly complained about these issues prior to the pandemic.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. Any other questions? Did you want to, any other questions? Can't see any. Okay, do we have any comments in relation to the petition? Councillor McMurdo. Yeah. Is there anybody else before we come to Councillor McMurdo? I believe he would want to put a motion. No? Okay, Councillor McMurdo, you go ahead, please.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Clark, and thank you to your wife for making the observations and in fact bringing forward the petition that you've just presented. The council is very keen to hear from residents in our borough and indeed those that use the facilities, whether that be in the leisure portfolio or beyond. So I do thank you. Just before I move on to the more formal part of my response, I will say briefly some of the comments that you make resonate well with me as a portfolio holder for leisure and culture. And in the year of 2019, the year of, there was a lot of discussion with Fusion Lifestyle Limited in and around some of those issues that you reference. So, Speaker, I will move on and move to the more formal acknowledgement, and that be that the Council notes, one, Borough Council entered into a 10-year contract with Fusion Lifestyle Limited from February 2014 to manage the Borough Council leisure facilities. 2. Prior to the COVID-19 global pandemic, this third-party contract agreement is as follows and not exhaustive. Transferred the previous annual operating costs incurred by the council to the operator, provided an investment in the facilities by the operator of approximately £3 million by an agreed capital investment plan from Fusion. Provided also the continued operation of sites that had previously been in part considered for closure. It also provided budget certainty through a fixed annualised contract fee for the term of the contract paid to the council from Fusion. 3. Over the course of the last 12 months, UK has experienced 3 national lockdowns. As a result, the council's leisure services have been significantly impacted by the restrictions on opening, operations and services previously provided to members of the public. The 8 leisure facilities operated by Fusion Lifestyle have been effectively closed for the majority of 2020 through to current times in 2021, in line with national restrictions at the time. 4. Whilst we remain in lockdown 3, all facilities remain closed. However, following the previous 2 lockdowns, Fusion reopened facilities in agreement with Bedford Borough Council at points in time when it was safe to do so, taking account of national guidance and local infection rates at that time. 5. Bedford Borough Council previously identified a serious weakness in several areas of service delivery by Fusion, and in line with the contract we entered into, a corrective action plan in December 2019 was agreed by both sides. This plan was extensive and was formed to bring about improvements during 2020. It is acknowledged that in the first quarter of 2020, that being January through to the 23rd of March, there were some signs of improvement, and we were managing and overseeing the performance daily. On the 20th of May 2020, Fusion, in line with government guidance, reopened our golf complex and Bedford International Athletics Stadium. Shortly after that, Robinson Pool and Gym was reopened in October 2020, at a time when Public Health and Bedford Borough Council were satisfied it was safe to do so. Other facilities were scheduled to reopen, however, we then imposed lockdown. So I hope that answers Mr. Clark's some of his points. And Speaker, I would like to move a motion, give notice of moving a motion either now or after we take other comments.
Madam Speaker, I think you're on mute.
Is that better now? I wasn't on mute, but it sometimes does that, doesn't it? You have to switch off and on to make it work. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Murdo. I have Councillor Moon first. I'm not sure whether he had his hand up during while you were talking. I'm not sure whether it's a question or a comment on the petition. Councillor Moon.
It's actually, I put my hand up before Councillor Murdo came into bat.
Sorry,
That's okay. As it happens, the comment applies both. I mean, I'm saying it simply that I suspect we've all had adverse feedback from residents about since Fusion took over, particularly in regards to the swimming pools. And I note in the motion there's a wish to address the standard of delivery of the services, and that's to be supported. So, but I would certainly support the motion because if only because the ending of such a contract can be a real commercial and financial risk. But it is to be hoped that when the contract ends, it will not be renewed, and that we will look either to bring the thing back in-house or bring the facilities back in-house, or put to appropriate suppliers, people with their genuine expertise in each of the very different disciplines, or indeed find an alternative body who can provide the same tax and revenue advantages that Fusion purport to offer. So yes, support the motion, but with real concerns about the quality of the service hitherto.
Thank you, Councillor Moon. Sorry that I missed you before. I've got several hands up now. So we have a motion from Councillor McMurdo. Are those hands up on the motion? Because if they are, can I have questions first of all? Sorry, is it seconded?
Yes, well, then, as Speaker, I have the motion to put to Council.
Okay, that wasn't the motion yet then. Okay,
No.
that's fine. Do we have any more comments on the petition before Councillor McMurdo gives his motion? Councillor Oliver, you want on the petition then, please.
Madam Speaker, as the Ward Councillor for Kingston North, where Kingston Pool is situated, and as a would-be regular swimmer, if only I had the time, I share Mr Clark's frustration and will once again be adding my voice to the calls for Fusion to reopen our local facility just as soon as the lifting of current restrictions allows this to safely take place. In my role as chair of the Environment Committee since mid-2019, I'm also able to say that prior to the first lockdown, elected members were very much involved in measures being taken to hold Fusion Lifestyle to account, which resulted in the action plan which Councillor Murdo as portfolio holder and officers subsequently drew up with that company. I can assure the petitioner that we will continue to scrutinise Fusion Leisure's performance on behalf of all borough residents for as long as they have a contract with Bedford Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. So I've got several hands. Any more people want to comment on the petition before we move to Councillor McMurdo for a motion? Councillor Coombs, is yours a comment on the petition?
Madam Speaker, my comment is on Councillor McMurdo's motion. I thought he just moved it. Sorry,
yes, I did too. Sorry, he hasn't yet. So we'll carry on with comments on the petition. Councillor Foley, is yours a comment on the petition?
Yes, it is.
Okay, would you like to go ahead then, please?
I very much share the concerns about the need for rapid reopening of the swimming pools, and share concerns that the swimming pools have not been of high level that we would have recently over recent years. I, however, do not believe that removing the contract from Fusion at this stage would necessarily be the best solution to that.
Thank you, Councillor Foley. Okay, Councillor McMurdo, would you like to move your motion, please?
Just in advance of moving the motion, Speaker, if I might say in response to Councillor Moon's observations, that this motion does not bring about any reference in any way and prejudice anything around procurement and the potential future of what the leisure facilities might look like post-contract with Fusion Lifestyle, and it would be remiss of me not to make sure that's well understood, because we just cannot go into that space. So therefore, I ask the Council resolves to ask the Executive to 1, continue to manage the contract with the provider, Fusion Lifestyle, and reopen our facilities as soon as they are confident that the necessary management arrangements and risk assessments concerning COVID-19 are in place in order to sustain the continued protection of the communities within the borough. 2, revert to the action plan as agreed in December 2019 and ensure delivery of the service is in line with what the contract calls for, taking account of the global pandemic and subject to any national restrictions imposed by the government. I move the motion, Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Murdo. Councillor Hill, I believe you're seconding the motion. Is that correct?
I'd like to second my motion. I reserve my right to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. So now, any questions on the motion? Is yours a question, Councillor Coombs, or a comment?
It's a comment, Madam Speaker.
Okay, well, any questions first of all, please? Can't see any hands. Sorry, I have to wind my way down to the bottom of the list just to make sure. Okay, so no questions, comments. Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Conservative Group will support the motion that Councillor McMurdo has just proposed. I think we fully understand where Mr Clark and the petitioners are coming from with regard to their desire to end the contract with Fusion. Fusion have been, in our opinion, a poor operator of our borough's leisure facilities, and they have been almost since the ink was dry on the contract. As Councillor Oliver just mentioned, repeatedly at Environment Committee, this has come up. Members have asked questions about Fusion's repeated failure to hit targets and KPIs. And some of us have also, as members will know, repeatedly asked questions here at full council to the Mayor and to the portfolio holder for leisure. So there is, Mr Clark and the petitioners should be assured that there is that concern from councillors across the spectrum about what's going on. And the comments about cleanliness and hygiene, we've heard these comments from other people as well, and it is of concern. Fusion has been like a running saw, and that was when the facilities were open. I think since lockdown, the matters have got worse as the leisure facilities had to close as a result of earlier lockdown conditions. But then trying to get Fusion to open them again has been a fairly tortuous process, and at cost. And I do say, I think Fusion have sadly exploited the COVID lockdown, making conditions for opening the facilities that they were contractually obliged to run. I think the point about ending the contract, I think ending the contract immediately, it would create 3 issues, and I think other members have alluded to them. There would be an immediate and additional cost to the borough, as the borough is not able to take advantage of the tax status that Fusion enjoy. The council would have to immediately set up its own operating company from scratch, and that would be at cost as well. And we might also be at risk of potential legal action from Fusion if we decide to end the contract. I'm sure there are clauses in as there would be in any contract for ending it, but we do have that risk as well. But I do agree with Mr Clark and the petitioners that the council should be looking to remove itself from the contract with Fusion as soon as it is practical to do so. But our first priority must be to get Fusion to reopen our leisure centres as soon as the lockdown conditions are lifted. They've got to be made to do the job they're contracted to do. We believe, and Conservatives have suggested this previously, the council should be looking at setting up an arm's length body as an operator that can then enjoy the same tax status as Fusion. Ultimately, Fusion do need to go. There is frustratingly a process that needs to be gone through if we're not to incur costs to borough taxpayers that I've just mentioned and leave ourselves at risk of facilities remaining closed when they should be being open and they should be being used. At the start of the meeting, we had a number of people saying they were members of Fusion and using the facilities. We want to see these facilities open and used by people. So the Conservative Group's happy to support the motion Councillor McMurdo has proposed. We're not happy with the Fusion situation as it stands, but we do recognise that getting shot of Fusion isn't something that can just happen overnight. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Coombs. Councillor Moon, I have your hand. Or is that a hand that was left up from before?
Well, it was an old hand, but I'll take the opportunity, actually, Madam Speaker,
okay,
responding to something that Councillor Murdo said. I've never suggested anything other, I think, in my comments than what I thought I was indeed supporting Resolution 2. that we have to make sure that delivery is in line with what the contract calls for. That's really all I was saying.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moon. Any further comments? Don't see any other hands raised. So, Councillor McMurdo, would you like to sum up?
Thank you, Speaker. Councillor Moon, I'm very grateful for that clarification. That's most helpful. And just to repeat, my thanks go to Mr. Clark for bringing this forward. I note it's not something that he's used to doing, so I am personally grateful, and I do invite him to contact me directly if he so wishes. So I move the motion and put it to Council. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. So the motion is before the council, and a poll has been set up to enable you to vote either for or against the motion or to abstain, and you'll have 1 minute to cast your vote.
I didn't want to speak again, Speaker, by the way.
Oh, you do want to speak, Councillor Hill?
No.
You don't? Okay, thank you.
Madam, we have 30 votes for.
Yep.
If you could just check, because we do have Councillor Jackson who's on the phone.
Yes, Councillor Jackson, are you voting for, against, or abstaining?
Am I unmuted?
Yeah, you are now.
I am, yeah, for. I'm sorry, I can't get my screen to respond quickly enough to do it on the
Okay,
computer.
thank you. Councillor Jackson, so you're for. 35 for. Is hear you very well.
Sorry, Madam Speaker, yes, we have 36 that have voted for.
Lovely, thank you. The motion is then carried. Thank you all. And thank you, Mr. Clark, for bringing that to council.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to thank those councillors for their consideration. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank you. So that concludes agenda item 7, and we'll now move on to agenda item 8. Agenda item 8 is questions from members. So do we have any questions from members this evening? Hands have gone straight up. Councillor Meader, I saw your hand up first.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Yeah, I have a question for the portfolio holder of Public Health and Wellbeing, that being Councillor Louise Jackson. I understand she's on the end of the phone, so I hope she
is. Yeah, it's going to be difficult.
Answer the question. If it's a problem, then please let me know. But I'll ask my question. She can let me know if it's difficult to respond. My question is, the public health grant allocations from government have now been published. My understanding is that there is no new money for our public health team. Can this be the case? This is one of those occasions where I hope I've got it wrong, but it's a question I'd like to answer, ask Councillor Jackson, if I may.
Yeah, Councillor Jackson, can you?
If I'm unmuted, am I unmuted yet?
You are, yeah.
Yeah, oh, perfect. This is working well. Yeah,
thank you, thank you.
Unlike my IT, yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Meader. I'm afraid what you said is correct. We had the announcement yesterday, and while we've got a 0.7% uplift to our core funding, that really translates to a cut in real terms, given that inflation's running at 1.5 to 1.8%. So this is very disappointing news. And as we've all seen, our public health teams have been working all hours to respond to the challenges of the pandemic, and they've been doing all that while trying to keep the rest of the services we're responsible for up and running. So I don't think their efforts should be underestimated. It's been a huge challenge, and they have been working flat out. And we've seen how COVID-19 has exposed and exacerbated health inequalities. And we're still seeing that in our infection rates right now, some of the highest rates of infection continue to be seen in higher density, lower income areas. So we know we've got some big problems that we need to address here. And it's that local intelligence that really matters, and it's really made a difference. And I don't think you can outsource that. The localised test and trace system, the welfare checks, the building of relationships with schools, all of the checks that our public health team have done with businesses to help prevent and manage outbreaks. And the work, the engagement work that we've done, speaking with community leaders so that we can help get key messages out to the harder to reach groups. So the welfare checks that we're doing, they're really important too, and the enhanced payments to help people to isolate. So all of this stuff is very locally driven, and it's really important that public health have the resources to do the job that they do best. And I don't think you can do any of that from a centralised call centre. And in fact, I'd question whether any of the centralised responses have delivered positive results for our communities, because the national test and trace system, well, that's been fairly widely panned, I think. I don't know if you can remember the government food parcels, they were not great. I'm not talking about the parcels that we delivered through the community hub or any of our fabulous community groups got together, but I'm talking about the stuff that came from the government. And the PPE, the start of the pandemic was really slow to arrive. Sometimes it wasn't what was expected. So I think this centralisation of systems hasn't worked. And I know some of this is because things were being stood up really, really quickly, but the truth is we should have been better prepared for this. So it's the local stuff that has really made a difference here, and it's the local stuff that will make a difference going forward. And for public health to receive a real terms cut in this year is frankly appalling. I mean, we still don't really know what we're going to be dealing with when we come out the other side of this. I think there's going to be a lot of alcohol and drug dependency to deal with. I think obesity, mental health problems. We're not the other side of this yet. We don't know what we're going to face, but there are going to be some huge challenges. And I think one of the problems that public health faces, and I say this every year before the executive when we discuss it, when we talk about the budget, is that realising the benefits of really good public health initiatives doesn't always happen very quickly. It takes quite a long time sometimes to see those benefits. And in effect, it's longer than a parliamentary term. And that's why it's always so easy to cut public health. But in this year of all years, I am incredibly disappointed that the really good work that public health do and will need to do going forward hasn't been recognised.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Bywater.
Madam Speaker, can I just make a short statement, please?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Meader. Yes, carry on.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Well, thanks for that response. I'm sure it's not the one that any of us wanted, but thanks for that, Councillor Jackson. It would be extremely difficult or even remiss of me not to respond. And I make no apologies for politicising my statement, as I'd be amazed if any member on this call tonight could truly disagree with what I'm about to say. Madam Speaker, the fact that this Tory government fails to acknowledge the vital role our public health officers have played throughout this pandemic, and their refusal to give them sufficient resources to meet immense challenges we will undoubtedly face over the next year and beyond, is an absolute disgrace, and on par with their miserly proposed 1% pay increase for NHS workers. This government have squandered billions on failed PPE and test and trace contracts. If that money had been given to local authority, public health experts, as our local test and trace successes have shown, it would have been far more effective. Now, at the risk of stating the obvious, what's needed before, during and after a pandemic is a competent, honest government that delivers leadership and clarity. Sadly, this government lacks all of those key qualities, and undoubtedly, as a nation and a borough, we will suffer for many years to come because of this. Madam Speaker, let me finish by giving a massive thank you to the hard-working and committed public health team, whose qualities are definitely not in question, and who have managed to keep going and deliver throughout this pandemic under extremely difficult circumstances. I'm sure I speak on behalf of all when I say the public health team have our gratitude and admiration for all that they have done and all they will continue to do. Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Jackson, for responding to my question. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for cutting you off there. Councillor Bywater, over to you now.
Thank you. Yes, my question relates to health as well. I'm really pleased to see the food strategy moving forward, and thank you to public health officers for that as well, for the ongoing work as along with many others. One thing related to access to healthy food and other well-being issues actually are council allotments. So I'm a bit concerned about the doubling of allotment rent charges from this coming October. From a look around at other council allotment charges, the new charges in Bedford don't look astronomical, to be fair. And I do appreciate there are options to have smaller size, a starter size or a half size plot. That's good. But the charges from October will still be doubling. And that includes the concessionary allotment rental rate. So I'm worried that this could be a barrier to new households taking on an allotment, because we know that there are other barriers already existing, such as sufficient free time, outlay of equipment, and just lack of general confidence and know-how for those sort of starting out. So I think it just sends out the wrong message to double charges, just as the council is trying to further address food and food-related health inequalities. So while the new charges may not put the average income householder off, it could well put off some of those on lowest incomes, even with a concessionary rate, as I've said. So my questions really are, has any modelling been done to ascertain how many people might be affected in terms of not renewing, or just as important, not taking up a new allotment for the first time? And also, what can the council do to minimise the barriers to more households on low income from growing their own food, so getting the many benefits from having an allotment, because there are many benefits?
Thank you, Councillor Bywater. Who would like to answer that?
I'm quite happy to go first, and then maybe Councillor McMurdo, who I think it's in his portfolio, might want to come in. Obviously, you'll have seen that we've transferred some of the allotments into self-managed, and I was, when I was a councillor in Kingsbrook, very proud to oversee the transfer to self-managed of the Mar Road allotments, which they tell me is about the third biggest in the country with 300 plots. At that stage, when we transferred the Mar Road allotments, their water bill was way in excess of 4,000 and going up on a regular basis. And that is one of the troubles, that we do have water bills going up. I don't know the details about the other ones, but the costs are considerable. And of course, water is a scarce resource, particularly in the east of England. I will look at some of the figures, and I'll talk with Councillor McMurdo to see some of those figures, but I would encourage the groups to go self-managed, because what we've seen in Mile Road is a huge investment by them in their facilities. So making sure they get some community payback and some community work from large organisations to go and help their hut, their building. They've now got different water supplies that really do reduce the water usage. It's now compulsory that if you put up a greenhouse or shed, you must have guttering to collect water. They've also got the security system, composting toilet, and a range of other things to make it a family experience, including some of the plots to help some people with mental health and rehabilitation of offenders. So some really good things that are happening at Mr. Alga, as is known. And I hope that the allotments we're just going to transfer do the same. But I know there's lots of allotments across the borough done by allotment associations or parish councils, and they do a huge amount. So let us do some work. As you say, it isn't expensive, and though it is doubling, we do pay a lot of money. That, it doesn't cover the costs of what the council has to pay to actually manage them. So I will look at that to make sure there's not a case. I think in many allotments there actually is a waiting list, which may be a concern. So we are trying to get. I know we did some in Oakley recently, as Councillor Abbots would do. We were very pleased to do that on, I seem to remember, a 50-year lease. So we have actually opened some new allotments in my time as mayor. But let me go away and do that. They are important. One of the biggest things in Mar Road allotments was it wasn't massively used until someone threatened to build on it. And then the number of people that came forward, and they are proving very successful. So I'll go away and actually do the work and see if we can actually do the details and see if we can support people that can't afford it. But as you say, I think the cost that it used to be, I know Mile Road is about £40 an annum, which is not huge, and you can pay in instalments, I believe. I don't know if Councillor McMurdo wants to add anything to that.
Do you have anything to add, Councillor McMurdo?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bywater, have you a supplementary question or a statement?
Thank you. I'd be interested to hear if you can pay in instalments. That would be really useful. And I appreciate the handing over for self-management. I think that's a really positive thing. Mile Road, I went to an open day there a few years ago and was massively impressed. I mean, the way people have just taken that on, and the real energy of, I mean, it's huge. The real energy of people there is fantastic and really inspiring. But I still think just it sends out the wrong message to be doubling. We shouldn't necessarily be expecting to cover the costs of allotments. I mean, they're a fantastic public service in multiple benefits, in physical and mental health. I mean, exercise, even if you're doing no dig. So I just think we need to really appreciate those benefits and just push those more to sort of recruit more allotment holders, perhaps from not the usual suspects of middle class retired people.
There are many things that are very worthy that we haven't got the money in, and you always champion them, but we have a budget to fulfil, and we actually do look after the pennies, Councillor Bywater.
Speaker, can I just jump in? Because I think there may be a misunderstanding going on here. I mean, I've checked the council's fees and charges, and it doesn't show the increase that we're talking about now. It maybe there's a mistake somewhere in the communication of it. So I think we need to check this, because the fees and charges agreed by the executive show going up from £60 to £60.60, and a half side plot from £30 to £30.30. So I don't know if some of the information has got misreported somewhere. I'm not accusing Councillor Bywater. It may be the way she's picked the information up from is wrong. So okay. I think we need to check the information on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Headley.
Could I just comment? It's on the website, unless I've misunderstood it, the council website. So a full rate from October this year is £60.60, and it was £30.30, or is currently £30.30.
No.
Is that half plot?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there may be an error on the website, but we'll check. We need to check that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sultan.
Thank you. Sorry about that. My question is to the Mayor. Okay, so the question is, at the full council meeting held on 3rd February, Mr. Rob Wall raised the plight of the villagers of Al-Walaja. You agreed that the action taken was in clear breach of UN resolutions, and stated that you had written to the Foreign Secretary to query how the government intended to respond to this illegal occupation. Did you get a response from the Foreign Secretary to your letter?
I did not.
Nice short answer. A follow-up question or a statement?
I do have a supplementary question as well.
Okay.
Could you please update us as to what course of action you have taken to consider this? I apologize. I do have a supplementary. I did misread my initial question. It's regarding the request from Mr. Wall to consider an official twinning. I was wondering what you considered and what other members have suggested. And I apologize, and how the council could support the village as well.
Thank you very much. I've been told I'm coming across quite quiet, so I'll try and speak up. I don't have the volume for the microphone, so I'll do my best. Town twinning was a 1960s, 70s concept, and after talking to colleagues, we need a new approach that is appropriate for this millennium. So I will bring a paper to full council that we inaugurate a friendship link that will recognise links that residents in the borough have with different towns and cities across the world. These would be community-led, where there is an opportunity for some sort of engagement from any borough resident with the friendship town or city. There will be no funding from the council, and there will be a periodic light touch review to ensure that there's still active opportunities for that engagement with the residents of the town or city. Finally, that same paper would offer the inaugural link to our Hoyager to be our inaugural friendship link town.
Thank you.
I have
Do you have a
statement.
comment? Yes.
I apologize again. I think the initial brief response put me off guard. So I'd like to thank the Mayor for contacting the Foreign Secretary, and I'm disappointed but not surprised that as yet he has had no response. I welcome the idea of building friendship links, and I'm pleased that the inaugural link will be with Alawalaja, and I thank him again.
Thank you, Councillor Sultan. Councillor McMurdo, you have your hand raised still? No, isn't.
It's legacy. I'll take it down now, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members?
Yes, please.
Yes, Councillor Wotton.
My question, very simple question, is about rural skips as something that got cancelled during the great pandemic. We're coming out of lockdown soon, you know, getting road maps and everything seems to be getting better. I just wondered whether rural skips is something that's going to start again soon, and when, and you know, can I sort of tell parish councils that? Good news.
Thank you, Councillor Wotton.
Probably to the mayor.
Yeah, I'll happily take that, Speaker, if that's okay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Royden.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen an extraordinary performance from our teams at the depot who've been out collecting waste over the COVID period. They've worked tirelessly through this pandemic and really excelled in terms of public service. We've had our bins collected right the way throughout this, and I can only express my thanks and gratitude to everybody who's been involved in that effort. And also, of course, the work at the HWRC, which has managed to continue. And we had that extraordinary episode where we collected waste at Oasis and brought it in. And so there has been an incredible amount of work to go to ensure that we continue collecting. Now, rural skips has been one of the things that we had postponed in relation to COVID, because we have people bringing along items, so the interaction with the staff. So we have to be very careful, but we've postponed it, and that's all we've done at the present time, postponed it. And we're talking about the possibility of that being reopened in September. So we are keeping it under review, and as and when it is safe to do so, and we have the staff to be able to do that, we will. But for now, it's something that we haven't been able to do, and I think that members of the council will probably support me in saying that we very much support the staff and the efforts that they have made to continuing to provide the services which they have, where staff have been affected by COVID themselves, but still those collections have continued. So I'd just ask Councillor Wotton if you'd be patient with us until such time as we are able to deliver that service. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor
I'll
Wotton?
make a short statement. No, we were making no aspersions about the officers or the gentlemen or people that work for the council, because they've done such a great job during the pandemic. It was a fantastic job. They've kept things ticking over, and everybody takes a hat off to them. And thanks them very much. My question was about the future, probably about the autumn when things return to normal. So thank you very much for workers, what they've done, and I just hope that you can use your good office to keep rural skips in mind, and when it's possible and we can get back together, hopefully rural skips will be again in the villages. But thank again on our behalf all the workers that have kept going through the pandemic. And I will also apologise for my very shaky internet link that keeps wobbling in and out. So hopefully you got most of that, and I'll put myself on mute double quick.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Wotton. Yes, I wasn't suggesting that you were in any way impugning the services of our collectors. I was simply saying that it is because of the pressures which have been placed upon them as a result of the pandemic that we've had to delay the delivery of the rural skip service. Thanks for that.
Thank you. I don't have any more hands raised. Do I have any more? I can't see anybody waving at me. Any more questions? No? Okay, thank you very much. That then concludes agenda item 8, and we'll move on to agenda item 9. Agenda item 9 is the report of the Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Authority. Can I invite Councillor Gambold as one of the Council's representatives on the Fire and Rescue Authority to present the report of the authority's meeting held on the 11th of February 2021 and to move its receipt. The report starts on page 9(1) of the agenda. Councillor Gambold, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just a little thing to add to that report. You might recall that Councillor Colleen Atkins, a couple of meetings ago, explained to us that our Chief Fire Officer, Paul Fuller, had announced his retirement, well, that he was going to retire. That means the authority has been looking to replace Paul with a new chief fire officer. An extensive canvass. We had candidates from the United States and Brussels. The authority have selected and offered the post of chief fire officer to Andrew Hopkinson, who is currently deputy chief fire officer, so he knows his way around the authority very well. You may know, have been on the authority a couple of years, which is as long as I've known Andrew. Very impressed with him. As a technician, he's excellent. Councillor Foley, if you want to understand how the fire service are trying to go green and cut down on the mess that big diesel trucks make, Andrew is your man to explain it all. He's also an excellent man manager. His interpersonal skills are a delight. He's going to be a great new chief fire officer when he takes up post in the summer. That's it, Madam Speaker. I've moved the report.
Thank you very much. Is it seconded?
Seconded by Councillor Atkins.
Thank you,
And
Councillor.
can
Oh,
I-
sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say I second the paper, but I also second the comments that Councillor Gambold has just made about Andrew Hopkinson.
Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Are there any questions on the report? I can't see any hands raised. Anybody waving at me? No. Do we have any comments on the report? Can't see anybody waving. So, Councillor Gambold, would you like to sum up, please?
Nothing to add, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much. The motion is before the council, and as this report is for receipt only, I'll assume that we're all in favour unless you indicate otherwise by either raising your hand or stating your name. Can't see any hands raised. Thank you. The motion is carried. That concludes agenda item 9, and we move on to agenda item 11, as there's no business to conduct relating to agenda item 10. Agenda item 11 is report of the Mayor and portfolio holders, and I now invite the Mayor to give a presentation on England's economic heartland and the transport strategy. Mr. Mayor, please.
Thank you very much, and I am hoping that you can see a slide.
We can.
Thank you very much. So this is a presentation, as it says, on the regional transport strategy, England's economic heartland, which, as I said before, is an area that covers from Swindon in the west across to Cambridgeshire, and from Northamptonshire in the north down to Hertfordshire in the south. So just a little bit about the heartland. It's an economic success if you look at all the figures from the government. The heartland includes the entirety of the Oxford-Cambridge arc, a national economic priority for government. As a region, we're home to world-leading centres of excellence in life sciences such as Unilever and Mologic locally, but far more wider ranging, world-leading expertise in advanced manufacturing, a creative and digital sector that leads the world, for example, Millennium and Carlton Studios, cutting-edge expertise in aerospace and the fast-growing space sectors like ARA and Cranfield University. But our success cannot be taken and must not be taken for granted. Just as individual businesses require continuing investment to flourish, so does the heartland and its infrastructure. The heartland covers towns and cities that have over 800 years of history, along with those that are a little bit younger. But 35% of our residents live in a network of small market towns and surrounding rural areas. For example, our villages in northeast Bedford are particularly rural in nature. The mix of natural and built environments, rural and urban environments, make our heartland a very attractive place to work, live and play. But it's also regional challenges. Poor transport connectivity leaves many in rural areas with limited choices. It's a contributing factor when it comes to social inequality. And more generally, our residents are likely to travel further and use their car more than the national average. And of course, we have significant planned growth. Bedford Borough Council standard growth numbers we got from the government are 1,305 houses per year, whereas nearby neighbours Milton Keynes and Central Bedfordshire have about 2,000 each per annum. So further actions required to change the scale and nature of the existing travel demand. The transport strategy was published in February 21 and has been submitted to the Secretary of State for Transport, and all 7 STB, subnational transport boards, have been asked to do so with the transport strategy. It was informed by a programme of technical work, and I'll talk more about that later, taken forward in collaboration with partners that include train operating companies, bus operating companies, and some of the expertise in things like the Transport Catapult in Milton Keynes. People across the heartland and in government itself. And it's also been shaped by the responses received through 2 rounds of public engagement that capture views of our partners, stakeholders, residents and businesses. Now, one of the biggest messages from our partners, from the forum members and the consultation feedback, was to be more ambitious in decarbonisation, which is why we set an ambitious target to be net zero carbon transport emissions by 2040, which is 10 years ahead of the legal requirement. Now, this is clearly a challenging target, but we believe that the strengths inherent in the region present the opportunity to achieve this. The ambition is a step-changing approach that is required to address the challenges of our transport system, the challenges it already faces. I mean, it can't be business as usual. And it's all the more critical if we're to realise our economic potential and deliver that sustainable growth that we wish. That ambition is captured in the strategy, vision and policies that flow from it. We need to seize the opportunity to harness the heartland's strengths and deliver new business solutions, to place a new approach to connectivity at the heart of a green recovery. There's a 5-point action plan in the strategy, and I'm going to just go through the 5. The first one is the decarbonisation. Our current pattern of travel and consumption of resources is not sustainable. As a region, we like to achieve net zero, as I've said, by 2040, but require concentrated and coordinated activity across society. Through the strategy, we'll pursue the need to decarbonise our transport system. There's a lot about this in the strategy and some of the other papers that are on the EEH website, and we've often offered to come to discuss in detail at a future climate change committee. It's interesting to hear about Councillor Wootton's digital infrastructure. It's obvious the benefits of digital infrastructure. The ability for many people to work from home is not there because the digital infrastructure is there. We need to reduce the need to travel, and digital technologies are central to the strategy for decarbonising the transport system. The work on pathways to decarbonisation, the technical study, highlighted 2 complementary routes to decarbonisation. Alongside policy levers to affect behavioural shift and to help reduce reliance on the private car, we will also require a highly connected transport system, one that provides better transport information to users. The third point in the action plan is to improve the east-west connectivity, provides the overriding transformation opportunities for the heartland, unlocking in the process opportunities to improve north-south connectivity. Improving connectivity will transform a region of discrete areas into one that offers enhanced opportunities for both individuals and businesses alike. So improving investment in the scale of East-West Rail, and understand the concerns around the route of that, but I haven't heard anybody disagree that we should have an East-West Rail. The Cambridgeshire Autonomous Metro, the Milton Keynes MRT, these will all act as catalysts for change, opening up new opportunities and supporting planned growth. But we must also ensure that the offer of the travelling public is the highest possible standard, that is safe, clean and high quality. We need to restore confidence not just in the short term, but in the long term. Local connectivity is important as well. We need to address the measures that will improve that local connectivity to ensure the hierarchy of modes to shape the detailed proposals coming forward. to respond to repurpose our space and to encourage active travel. We need to think creatively about how to improve connectivity in our market towns and rural communities, to look to create hubs that provide individual and businesses with access to services and opportunities, but without needing to travel so far. We need to ensure that our approach to connectivity reflects our diversity of our communities, that our approach reduces social inequality by improving access to opportunity. At a time when our town centres are undergoing further change, when the way offices operate are also changing, we need to be ambitious in seeking to do things differently to secure the funding that will make it happen. And the fifth point, it's critical that we do include this because so many transport strategies don't. We need to use, and we have a strong evidence base, but this highlights that the freight and logistics is one of the largest contributors to carbon emissions. It's also potentially one of the most difficult to implement as a solution to reduce emissions. But we must continue to recognise the crucial need to plan positively for freight and logistics as part of our transport system. We are already seeing innovative ways of action across the region when it comes to servicing businesses, providing customers with novel ways of having their goods delivered, and we need to build on this. There is an extensive evidence base which has been built up from the bottom, comprising a number of detailed pieces of work, all of which are available in the Heartland partners, both within the region and nationally. A GIS-based data bank, a policy scenario model, persona modelling, which is fascinating, population segmentation, first last miles projects, pathway to decarbonisation, passenger rail studies, and technical studies such as the freight studies. All of these can be found on the EEH website. So what we're trying to do is enhance the environment. It's critical that we try to do this whilst the legal requirement is to have net zero by 2050. We want to actually have it by 2040. It's a key driver, but it's part of a wider commitment shared by region and government to ensure that we plan growth is delivered in a way that demonstrates net environmental gain. And we need to make sure that when we come to our local plan, we actually build that in as well. There's further work, further paper coming to the council via the ARC in both environmental credentials, and also we have the government consultation on the Oxcam ARC spatial framework that was published earlier this year, which makes sure we make the points about enhancing the environment in those. Road schemes in the strategy are to meet existing needs. So there are road schemes in the strategy. We have to be realistic. There is and will continue to be a need for some journeys to be used by the road. Not just for single car journeys, but vitally important for freight, logistics, buses, mass rapid transit schemes, walking and cycling. There's a commitment to reduce private car journeys by 5% each decade based on 2019 levels. It gives us a focus to work with partners, bus companies and deliver walking and cycling ambition. The first last mile tool, the persona mapping, allows us to identify the places where there is a strong propensity to use alternatives to car if people are given a choice. And that is important, that people need to be given the choice to do that. So ultimately, the delivery of specific proposal will remain the responsibility of individual infrastructure owners and service providers. Implementing at a regional level complements and builds upon the roles of those individuals, providing added value in three ways: strategic influence, coordination, and accelerating delivery. The transport strategy investment pipeline establishes the need for investment in order to support the delivery of the planned growth. Realising that growth will in turn be dependent upon securing the funding and or finance to enable the region's investment priorities to be developed and then delivered. It's clear a combination of public-private sector funding will be required, as will a mixture of capital and revenue funding. This plan is ambitious and will require a coordinated approach across the public sector, different government departments, all parts of local authorities, public sector bodies, and businesses and residents. I do urge you to go to the website. Although the document is 88 pages long, there is an 8-page summary, and I would suggest you all go and at least read that. There's also a number of other documents that support that. I've sent members the slides earlier on this evening, but they do include some additional map slides, which I thought wouldn't work in the presentation over WebEx. Please do have a look at them. You'll have to zoom in. Thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions.
Thank you. So is the presentation motion seconded? Yeah, thank you, Councillor Murdo. So are there any questions? Councillor Foley.
Thank you, Speaker. Yes, I was particularly pleased to see that there's talk of decarbonisation and a recognition that it can't be achieved simply by shifting from petrol cars to electric. Yeah, and there is a real need to reduce the need to travel as well. However, what my question here is both, is the 5% reduction in private car journeys really going to be anywhere near sufficient to produce the sorts of results that we need? And secondly, how on earth are we going to stand a chance of meeting such a target while the government has its firm plans to build an Oxford to Cambridge expressway, which effectively will make an awful lot more car use very attractive for people?
We can't hear you, Mr. Mayor. I think you...
I was being very good in doing what I told him, mute myself while not speaking.
Yeah.
The bit you don't tell is to unmute when you want to speak, but I have done. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the first thing, the government has backtracked on that slightly. So there is unfortunately two projects at Highways England called the Oxford to Cambridge Expressway. One is the Oxford to Milton Keynes bit, which is not. And in the document, you'll see there's a number of other studies. The Black Cat to Caxton Gibbet one will go ahead, and that is not a new road, but that is a replacement of the existing one. And you will see that cars sitting at the Black Cat roundabout and on that road and travelling very slowly, where pollution will be high and they're not using the optimal numbers. But obviously when we build it, and one of the conversations with Highways England is what can we do alongside that road? So worryingly, when we tried to say to one of the ministers and say, it might be good to put a trench down the side and we could put some carbon fibre down, her response was, I'm probably giving away her name, their response was, that's not us, that's DCMS. Now, this is not joined up government. When we're putting it, it's 1/10 of the cost to put carbon fibre in. But while you're doing that, you actually should also put cycleways in definitely to make sure that people can do there. And we've had some lobbying to make sure by the equine industry to make sure there's equine access across Wye Boston as well, which Highways England have taken account of. So it's about making sure we get that and how we have the connectivity. So the 5%, I think it makes people see achievable. I sat down and think, what does 5% mean for me? And it means 5 days in every quarter when I would have used the car, I won't. I think we can all sit down and actually say, okay, 5 days in January to March, don't use it. April to June, can you think of 5 days you wouldn't? I think we can all exceed that. And I think if targets are to be there, it'd be really good. Now I'm going to start writing down which my 5 days are to say that, and can I actually 6 or 7? So I think that's not achievement in a decade. That's a year. And once we can say we can do it in a year, how do we do that? This is not going to be easy. And really, please, if you're not there, come along when Naomi Green, I think, is coming to our climate change committee. We'll go through this. It's not easy. It's not challenging. But when we set the target of reducing carbon by 40% in the borough's own carbon emissions, we thought that was challenging. We hit 62%. So it's only when you start, you go there. The important thing to me is to make sure that our rural community, and the reason the rural paper happened is they look, if we take Councillor Towler's ward, there are villages there that, a regular bus is a couple of times a day, and there's no access to that. They can't get that. Therefore, you need a car. Otherwise, you are penalised that. And some of them don't have village. We've got, I think, about 20 villages that don't have a regular bus and don't have good internet. So we need to provide that. If you look at the subsidy in London for travel compared to here, it is woeful. If we had the same subsidy as London, we could have decent buses on that. We could do the have the technology to actually get on your mobile phone if it worked in the area and actually book somebody to come and pick you rather than needing your car when you need to get in. So access to on-demand, and that could be electric, because obviously one of the issues with electric vehicles at the moment is they do breed inequality, because some of the people with the least income cannot afford them. So if we force people to go electric, we are going to increase that inequality. Very long answer, Councillor Foley. There's lots of issues and problems, but I think we're starting to look at the issues. So please come along that. Please read the document. If you've got questions, I will pass them on to people more technically capable than me.
Thank you. Councillor Weir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your presentation. And I did look at the slides earlier, and a lot of detail in there, which is quite interesting stuff. And you used a phrase in your presentation that it can't be business as usual, which I really do get. And we all know that change is coming. If we can get the improvements in digital infrastructure that we hope we can get, I just wondered, when this strategy was started, was it before COVID came along and the working practices have changed? And how much have the potential working practices been factored into this strategy?
So it was started before, but part of the consultation was during. So it straddled before and after the two consultation. One was before, one was after. And I think that in conversations with people in EH and with our own staff, the two chief executives on the call now, about and some of the directors, about how we look at our own workforce. So, you know, trying to decide what our workforce don't want. So that's very difficult. So some people desperately want to come back in for various reasons, maybe for the company, maybe because there's 5 people in shared accommodation, and trying to say poor bandwidth when 5 of you just doesn't work. You're sitting on the edge of the bed all day, it cannot be good for you. There are other people that have got the space and got the bandwidth and are incredibly productive. So it's not as simple as that. What we are doing and talk to senior officers about getting out more surveys and letting staff know that on the 21st of June, we won't be going back to business as usual. Now so they're just in our own workforce, that's the key thing. Now, that has the consequences, you know, that we don't expect if people are going to come in 1 or 2 days a week for every day to bring the chair they've taken home, the 2 screens they've taken home, to bring them back in once a week. That's not going to be realistic, so there will be costs. So we need to work out what people want and how it works. I suppose my slightly flippant but probably realistic for if people are saying they're going to work 2 days a week at Borough Hall or in any office, doesn't matter where, that nobody will want to work Monday or Friday, and that travel on Monday and Friday will be really, really easy, but Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday will be really difficult because everybody will be doing their days in the office there. And we need to think about how that works. And doing it in rotation, which my first thought doesn't work, because if you've got caring facilities or so forth. Some of the things that are changing is the rail companies now allow looking, I think Chiltern Rail will talk to allow looking at a 3-day-a-week season ticket. Now, that's really good, but I actually do wonder why they're deciding 3. So they seem to be fixed on 3. Why can't they have 2? Or why can't they have a day of 10 tickets a month or something? So we've heard, and that's one of their issues about that is the ticketing, and that's why we need a really good digital, because if you're going 3 days a week, it's easy to say your ticket is for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. You can't travel on Thursday, Friday. But if it's random days, you need a decent ticketing system, and that's almost only be electronic. So it has taken note. We don't have all the answers because nobody knows what people are going to go back to. There are a number of officers saying to me, I'm really happy working at home. I'm really productive. Got to worry about some of them. Sometimes they send you emails and me emails that we need to work out work-life balance. So there's lots of challenges, lots of questions, but most importantly, lots of opportunity.
Thank you. I don't have any more hands for questions, so do I have any comments? Can't see anybody. Would you like to sum up then, please, Mr. Mayor?
Nothing further to add. I'd just like to encourage people to go to the website and look at all the various documentation. There's an awful lot of data behind what was produced. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. So now the motion is before council. as this presentation is for information only, I'll assume that we're all in favour unless you indicate otherwise by either raising your hand or stating your name. Okay, so the motion is carried. That concludes agenda item 11 and we move on to agenda item 12. Agenda item 12 is reports of the executive. So I now invite Councillor Atkins to present the first executive report on the Food and Feed Service Plan 2021 to 2022, starting on page 12.1 brackets 1 of the agenda, and move the recommendations therein. Councillor Atkins, please.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to make clear that this item is different from the Council's food strategy that Councillor Jackson presented to the Executive on the 3rd of March, and indeed was mentioned by Councillor Bywater in questions tonight. So this item is the Food and Feed Service Plan for this coming year, 21-22, and it was agreed at the Executive meeting on the 3rd of March, and it's now brought to full council tonight for approval. So, as you know, I bring this plan to full council every year as it's an annual report. So members will be really well aware of it and understand that it enables the council to fulfil its statutory obligations under the food safety and feed legislation. So it's set out in Appendix A. And you'll have heard me say at the Executive that it's the work programme for the year for the Environmental Health and the Commercial Regulation Service. It looks back at the previous year and it talks about the significant impacts that have been associated with COVID-19 pandemic and the Council's overall response. So I did talk a lot more about it at Executive, and one of the things that I said then was the impressive work that is being done, and I just want to go over that again tonight, just to show what well, it's just extraordinary what the team have managed to do. So during the period that's covered in this report, and as part of the Council's COVID-19 response, the Environmental Health team responded to 1,400 service requests. They sent approximately 4,700 letters to local businesses, and these letters provided direction and guidance. And in addition to that, they made 1,000 visits to businesses to monitor the COVID compliance, and they issued 35 formal enforcement notices. In addition to this COVID work, the Environmental Health team continued to inspect the food-related businesses on a risk assessed basis, and so they carried out 456 food hygiene inspections and 359 food standards inspections.
Oh, you've switched yourself to mute, Councillor Atkins.
Yeah. Apologies.
No worries, carry on.
So I hope, did you get all of those figures?
I think we did, yes.
Okay, good. So if you all heard them, then I'm sure that you'll all agree that the work undertaken by the Environmental Health team in partnership with the Public Health team and the way they responded both locally and nationally to the impact of COVID-19, that what they did was exceptional. And I thank the team for their tremendous work in keeping the public safe and in so many different ways. And I'm sure that you'll all agree with me. I hope you will. So I move the report.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there any questions on the report? Quickly look. No hands raised. So are there any comments on the report? Nobody waving at me, no hands raised. Thank you, Councillor Atkins. Would you like to sum up, please?
I have nothing further to say except that by the silence and I hope the agreement that people do recognise the tremendous work that has been done.
Yes, thank you. There's lots of nods, which you may not be able to see. Thank you. So the motion is before the council. A poll has been set up to enable you to vote either for or against the motion or to abstain. and you have 1 minute to cast your vote. Don't think we've got anybody on the phone now. Everybody's with us, aren't they? So, is that correct?
Yes, I think I've just managed to unmute myself, so yes.
Okay, Councillor Jackson. Glad you could do with us. Do we have a result, please? Leslie? Do we have a result? You're still on mute if you're trying to tell us. Not sure whether we have a result. Could you write it in the chat as we can't hear you?
I think Leslie's having connection problems.
Yeah. Do you know what the result is, Rebecca? Do you have access to that?
Unfortunately, I can't see it. I can only see the poll questions. I can't see the result. I'm not sure if anybody else can.
No, we can't.
Can I suggest, Madam Speaker, that we just do a raising of hands, and if anybody does not want to support the motion, then they could indicate by saying their name.
Good idea. Back to the old faithful way. Could everybody raise their hands if you're supporting? Everybody appears to be raising their hands. Some hands on there.
I can't put my screen on, but I'm supporting.
You're raising your hand. Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Okay, thank you. Anybody against? Can't see any hands. Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you.
Much better system.
It's much easier. Thank you. Can I now invite Councillor Headley to introduce the second executive report on the 2020-2021 revenue and capital budget trends, starting on page 12.2 brackets 1 of the agenda, and to move the recommendations therein. Councillor Headley, please.
Thank you very much. We bring this report to you because of two changes to the capital programme. They relate to two projects. Where once the projects have progressed, the initial estimates included in the capital programme previously are found not to be sufficient. The first is the Rogers Court accommodation for rough sleepers, and the second is the depots project. There's always a risk when setting a budget at an early stage in the capital programme that it may need to be revised when further work is done, including, as in one of these cases, at the point when the tenders are actually received. In both cases, the costs have been thoroughly reviewed, and the changes to the capital programme as set out in the recommendations is proposed to match the resources to the revised costs. I move the recommendations as set out. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Do we have any questions on the report? Councillor Moon.
Yes, just on those two changes, the next steps accommodation and the depot enhancement. These are quite large variations. Is there some explanation for that other than, I mean, it's all very well to say they've been recosted, but these are quite significant and over 0.8 of a million in each case.
No, thank you. I mean, they are, as you point out, they are, say, around 0.8 million in each case. But they are sizable projects nonetheless, with a number of risks built into those projects. The depot project in particular is originally, I'm just looking back now, originally almost 3.9 and almost £4 million project set back in 2019. And clearly a lot has happened since 2019, and it may be that when the tenders came back in, there may have well been safe working practices, etc., relating to COVID that have impacted some of those costs that have come in with the tenders. I think there's always that risk that the initial estimates done several years in advance do turn out not to be what actually happens when the tenders are received a number of years later, when circumstances and building costs or whatever may well have changed. The Rogers Court one is a much more recent example, but the further work that was done on that project indicated more fire safety work in particular was needed. Obviously, a lot of that is relating to the use that is being put to. There's a greater degree of fire safety needed than what's currently in the building. They are changes of significance. That's why we've brought them to full council.
I have a supplementary, really, a follow-up.
Okay.
With Next Steps Accommodation, the Rogers Court is a recent purchase. I accept in parts the depot issue was costed 2-3 years ago, and that is always ripe for substantial changes subsequently. But something we bought in December 2020, I'm assuming that this change in accommodation, change in cost, hasn't been built into the purchase price. Did we pay the correct purchase price in the circumstances? Or indeed, if that is not an issue, was there sufficient surveying work done at the time?
These are quite clearly questions that I asked myself, as you'd obviously expect, and I've been reassured that the valuation was done on a proper basis, and there was the proper valuation for that property in that condition. But clearly, it's the work that needs to be done to it to turn it into what we need to turn it into, as opposed to the office accommodation, where the extra costs have come in.
So, if I may, Madam Speaker.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I mean, this was done at very short order because it's a government contract, and they wanted to put it in place really quickly. So, to try and hit their timescales is remarkably difficult. Try and make sure we get through that. So, I would say that we wouldn't normally work at that pace, but we have a government grant, and they wish us to put it in place very quickly. We've got a slight extension on that. But it is not the way we'd normally work, and we've had to do some work as we go through. So we did find some health and safety issues, some asbestos that we weren't expecting hidden behind stuff. So we didn't do the deep penetration stuff, the work that we'd expect to have when we bring it forward. So it has been a whole project at an incredible pace, and still continues to be.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bywater.
Thank you. My question just relates to the 250,000 from the carbon management programme that's going to be moved over to the depot enhancement. I just wanted to ask, is this for carbon reduction measures, or will it reduce? Is it going to be about the efficiency of the building that will reduce carbon emissions either directly or indirectly?
Yeah, it's actually 25,000. It's relating to particularly to lighting improvements at the Mosbury depot, which will switch them over from very old lighting systems to much more energy efficient systems. So it's in line with what we'd use the carbon management programme work for, if we were doing it in isolation anyway.
Thank you. I misspoke. Yes, 25, not 250. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Moon wants to come back with another question.
I do. I'm afraid that I thought the Mayor's intervention was seriously unfortunate. It doesn't strike me as a remotely satisfactory justification for 0.9 million additional costs that we were rushed into. We didn't do the deep surveys.
Is this a question, Councillor Moon?
Yes, it is. It's a question. I'm going to say simply that I accept that we can't get a clear answer now, but is it going to be possible to follow this up through other means?
Councillor Moon, it wasn't the only reason. It's a contributing factor, and Councillor Headley gave you a number of reasons there, but I'm sure we can follow it up, and we are keeping a close eye on the project because it is, it's been brought here for a reason, and both myself and particularly Councillor Headley and Councillor Atkins are looking at the project on a regular basis, and I'd be only too happy to share that with you.
Is that okay, Councillor Moon now? Okay, thank you. Do I have any comments on the report? Are you commenting on the report, Councillor Moon, or is that your hand from before? Okay, and I don't appear to have any other hands up. So Councillor Headley, would you like to sum up, please?
Yeah, nothing further to add. Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is now before the council. I believe Leslie's back with us, so we'll try again. A poll's been set up for you to enable you to vote either for or against the motion or to abstain, and you have 1 minute to cast your vote.
Yes, Madam Speaker, we have 33 votes for.
Thank you. The motion is then carried.
Madam Speaker, the poll did not appear on my screen for some reason. I'm not sure why, but I'll vote for it as well if I can be.
Yeah, same with me, Madam Speaker. I had to scroll down. It took a while. By the time I scrolled down, the result was declared.
Oh yes, sorry. You're right, Councillor Moon. It is at the bottom. Sorry, Madam Speaker, but if I could just be recorded as voting supporting it, please.
Okay, thank you.
Same here, Madam Speaker. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I'll give you all a bit more time to scroll down then. You have a minute to do it. So, but it's at the bottom of your screen. So, with the next one, please scroll down. Okay, thank you. Anyway, the motion is carried. Those people who didn't get to vote were voting for as well, so that's good. I now invite Councillor Headley to introduce the final executive report on the medium-term financial strategy refresh. Can somebody? I'm not sure who's on.
Councillor Moon.
Councillor Moon, could you mute yourself, please? Oh, thank you. The medium-term financial strategy refresh, starting on page 12.3 brackets 1 of the agenda, and to move the recommendation therein. Councillor Headley.
Thank you very much. This is our latest review of our MTFS alongside the updated financial forecasts. Firstly, I'll reiterate a point that you will have heard me make many times before, but it is a most fundamental point when we're looking at this report, is that we're living with a very high degree of uncertainty, and that includes the ongoing impact of COVID-19, the economic impact from the pandemic, and the lack of information on future government funding levels. So much could change in the coming months and years, which is why we refresh this at least twice a year. And obviously, you'll be used to seeing this, say, at least twice a year. And in fact, we did it 3 times last year. However, this is our key financial planning document. We do put a lot of work into looking at the assumptions we make and making the best calculations of the ongoing and forward-looking situation. So when you look at the actual figures, in the central case, the funding gap is around 17 million over the 4-year period. And that remains broadly in line with our transformation savings plan that we looked at during budget setting. So clearly there was a challenge there, there was a gap there that needs action to work on, but it is a similar gap that we've already put in place plans to deliver. So our focus obviously in the coming months and years will be on delivering those plans as we've set out at the budget setting time. So I move the recommendations as set out in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Headley. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are there any questions on the report? Can't see any hands there. Anybody waving at me? No. Any comments on the report? No, no comments on the report. So once again, the motion is before the council and a poll has been set up to enable you to either vote for or against the motion or to abstain. And it's at the bottom. If you scroll right down the bottom, you've got 1 minute to vote.
Madam Speaker, I believe everyone has voted now. There's 44.
Thank you very much. So the motion is carried. That concludes agenda item 12, and we now move on to agenda item 13. Agenda item 13 is the report of the General Purposes Committee. So I now invite Councillor McHugh as Chair of the General Purposes Committee to present the report of the committee relating to the Council's Pay Policy Statement 2021-22, which was circulated on the 10th of March 2020, and to move the recommendation as set out. Councillor McHugh, please.
Thank you. Yeah, the Localism Act 2011 requires us to have a pay policy statement to approve it each year and publish it. So General Purposes reviewed the statement and it is before you. So I move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is the motion seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Who said that?
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson.
Invisible Councillor
Are there any
Jackson.
questions? Yeah, I can't see you, so it's hard to... Are there any questions on the report? Can't see any hands raised. Anybody waving at me? No. Are there any comments on the report? Can't see again any hands. Councillor McHugh, would you like to sum up, please?
Nothing further.
Thank you. So the motion is before the council. A poll has been set up to enable you to vote either for or against the motion or to abstain, and you have 1 minute to cast your vote.
Madam Speaker, we have 37 votes for.
Thank you. The motion is carried. That concludes agenda item 13, and we'll now move on to agenda item 16, as there's no business to conduct. Oh.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to move under FC 12.1.14 that full council procedure rule FC 9 notice of motion be suspended so that a motion can be moved to recognise the contribution that the outgoing Chief Executive has made to the Borough of Bedford during his tenure. So under FC 12.1.14, I move suspension of standing orders.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
I understand that's seconded by Councillors Coombs, McHugh, McMurdo and Oliver.
That's correct.
Thank you. Is everybody in agreement? Can everybody
Agreed.
nod? Thank you. Back to you then, Mr. Mayor, please.
Thank you very much. The notice of motion is that an extraordinary meeting of full council be called on the 12th of May 2021, following the meeting of the annual council be held that evening, to confer the title of Honorary Freeman of the Borough to Philip John Simpkins under Section 249 of the Local Government Act 1972, in recognition of the eminent service rendered to Bedford Borough during his long employment by the council, culminating in 12 years as its Chief Executive. I believe the motion is seconded by Councillor Coombs, McHugh, McMurdo and Oliver.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm going to I'm just going to take 5 people to speak, the people who have proposed and seconded the motion, because you'll all obviously have a chance to say whatever you want to say to the Chief Executive later in the year, hopefully. So first of all, I'd like to call Councillor Coombs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can I say I'm delighted to jointly second this motion along with other party leaders, the one that has just been proposed by the Mayor. I think this is a very, very well-deserved honour. Philip, on behalf of my group, Conservative Group, I'd like to thank you for your many years of service to the Borough Council and the people of Bedford Borough. Your appointment as Chief Executive predates my arrival in 2011. I think for many of us, in fact, the overwhelming majority at the Council, we've only ever known one Chief Executive, and that has been you. So I think you're going to be a very difficult act to follow, and it will take some getting used to by elected members. We're keeping our comments short today, so I look forward to saying more at a later date. But for now, Philip, thank you very much for what you've done. I think it's a very well-deserved honour, and we wish you all the well for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Coombs. Councillor McHugh.
Thank you. Yes, I'd like to congratulate Philip on his upcoming honour and therefore the ability to drive some sheep over the town bridge, I think. Phil's been a senior officer for all my time on the council. So for me, and as we've just heard from Councillor Coombs, many others, Bedford Borough Council without Phil will be very strange indeed. It turns out that my first committee meeting, which I think was community support, happened to be Phil's first committee meeting as officer in charge. I would never have guessed, because he handled that meeting with what we've come to know is his customary calm and authoritative knowledge. So before I burble on, I look forward to the Freeman of the Borough event later in the year when we can share further thoughts. But for now, I'd just like to say that Phil has been unfailingly devoted to the good of the borough. He served the borough admirably, and we all owe him a lot of thanks. And I'd like to send very best and very warm wishes to you, Phil, on your upcoming retirement.
Thank you, Councillor McHugh. Councillor McMurdo.
Thank you, and a very welcomed and motion that the Mayor's brought forward, and well done, Phil. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Philip for his contribution to this council and the Borough of Bedford on behalf of all the independent candidates he's worked with over the many, many years and in fact decades. So on behalf of Councillor Bywater and Foley, we wish you a long and healthy retirement and very good luck. Phil, I just would like to thank you for your sincerity, your cooperation and willingness to discuss with independent representatives over the years. Good luck and all the best in your retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMurdo. Finally, I've got the Mayor, Councillor Oliver.
I was going for alphabetical order, but there we go. So, along with other group leaders, I am delighted to second this proposal. I would like to thank Philip for his many years of dedicated service to Bedford Borough, not only on behalf of the Labour group, but also on behalf of all councillors, past and present. Regardless of their political persuasion or their position within the council, Philip has always been clear that his door, or more latterly his virtual door, has been open to all elected members. It wasn't always thus on the third floor of the building now known as Borough Hall, and I hope not too many of us have abused his offer. I'm sure there will be a future occasion when we can all make longer speeches and share important memories, but for now, I would just like to say that you will be missed and to wish you a long and happy retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Thank you for those seconds. And just to endorse those comments, but Phil, a number of councillors want to speak, and we thought we'd much prefer to do it in person. And so we'd be delighted, and I do believe this motion will pass now and on the 12th of May, that we'd like to share that with you personally when we're able to do so in the autumn. So hopefully we can catch up and talk to Tony Malotti to fix a time where we can have it somewhere in the Corn Exchange complex. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Before we all, do you want to clap now, or shall we? Let's vote on the motion first, shall we? I don't think we're not going to call a recorded vote, but if you can all raise your hands if you support this motion. He's got his papers for recorded vote. Brilliant. That motion is carried. Can you now?
I just can't be seen.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. So the motion is before Council. It has been passed. So I now ask that you join me in a round of applause to thank Mr. Simpkins for his many years of dedicated service to the council and the Thank you. Chief Executive has asked if he can respond. He thought he was responding to the vote of thanks, but he's hopefully he will now be able to respond to that. It's been a surprise. Can't see him. He's gone for a minute off my screen.
No, I am here with my camera on the speaker.
Thank you. Would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, I will keep it brief. Members have surprised me throughout my career, but you have just topped it tonight. I did not to see that motion coming. I had got a few words here. I will just park them, and I am just truly grateful. And for once, I am almost lost for words. But thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing the vote in May, and then obviously seeing it passed to the event that the Mayor and group leaders and Councillor McMurdo have outlined. Just thank you, and thank you. It has been, I will say publicly, it has been an absolute honour and privilege to be the Chief Executive of this borough, and even more so because probably most of you know I am Bedfordshire born, bred, educated and worked my whole life. So to be the Chief Exec of the Borough Council of the county town in which I've spent all my life has been a real honour and privilege. You as current members and former members, and I've probably well into the hundreds of members that I've dealt with over the years, it has been an absolute privilege. I'm not going to go into any stories tonight. I will leave that for a later function. But thank you all, both current and past members, in whatever role I've known you as, whether it be the Mayor, whether it be as a group leader, as a portfolio holder, as a backbench member, whether it be in your ward role or other roles. It has been truly great, and I wish you all, and I wish the council all the very best for the future. And that is what I would like to say publicly. Thank you, one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Would you like another round of applause? Thank you, and we look forward to the event when we can hopefully meet in person later in the year. Wonderful, thank you all. So that concludes agenda item 16, and we now move on to agenda item 17. Agenda item 17 is under the Local Government Act 1972, Schedule 12A as amended, exclusion of the public. Please could the Chief Executive now explain why we need to do this?
Just before I do, Madam Chair, Madam Speaker, sorry, just confirm that there are no other members of the public or indeed officers other than committee support, Terry and myself, actually in the room.
We have got some. We'll give them a few seconds just to.
We are still streaming live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might have to stop the stream.
Yeah, we will do that.
You have to pass the motion first, and then the live stream will be.
Thank you very much, Alison.
Okay, thank you, Alison, for that.
Madam Speaker.
Okay.
Madam Speaker, might it be prudent to give an explanation to anyone that is watching exactly what is happening before we move the motion?
Yeah. If you could just, explain that, please.
This involves, sorry, thank you. This involves individual members of staff where members may wish to express a view, and therefore that should not be considered in public. It is an exempt item, so it relates to senior members of staff, and hence why I'm asking the council to move into part 2. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. We still have a couple on there. I can see. They can leave, that would be good. But in the meantime, I will move from the chair that council passes a resolution under the Local Government Act 1972 to exclude the public from the remainder of the meeting on the grounds that consideration of the following item of business is likely to involve the disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 1, 2 and 3 of part 1, schedule 12A to the Act as amended. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you. Councillor McCrew, Councillor Weir. And is that agreed? Everybody nod, shake, yeah.
Agreed.
Wonderful, thank you. The motion is carried. So now may I please ask all members of the public and all officers, with the exception of the Chief Executive, the Interim Chief Executive and the officers from Democratic Services to log off at this point and for the live stream to be switched off.
Can I just say, Madam Speaker, it might take a moment to switch the live stream.